911. What's your emergency?
It's SeaWorld Orlando. She's underwater. Orchid's got her, and there's blood everywhere.
The dispatcher's calm reply never stood a chance against the chaos roaring through the line. Screams in the background, children wailing, the heavy crash of water colliding against concrete. Just minutes earlier, the stadium had been alive with wonder. Music blared, phones flashed like strobe lights, and kids shouted, "No cap! This is crazy!" as Eris, the star of BlueWave Marine Park, soared through the air. Parents filmed with shaky hands, convinced they were capturing the highlight of their family trip. It was joy packaged as spectacle, an illusion sold as magic. And then it ruptured. The surface broke into violent foam, gasps spread like fire, and what had been laughter turned into silence so heavy it pressed against every chest. No choreography, no script, only raw instinct reclaiming the stage. This isn't just a tale about an orca and a trainer. It's a story about trust, belief, and the price of ignoring the wild when it finally speaks. Now tell me, when the truth breaks through the illusion, what do you think people really remember most? Drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe if you want to uncover more stories hidden beneath the surface. She wasn't born near the sea. Sophie Lane came from Kansas, where endless fields of wheat rolled farther than the eye could see. But while other kids chased fireflies and played ball in the summer heat, Sophie sat cross-legged in her room, flipping through old marine encyclopedias. She could name every dolphin species by heart, sketch an orca's dorsal fin from memory, and mimic the high-pitched whistles of pods like she had grown up underwater. Her parents never understood. "Why whales?" they'd ask, staring at their daughter lost in a world of waves. But Sophie's fascination wasn't a phase. It was constant, like the tide. And deep down, she knew. One day, she'd stand beside these giants. On her 13th birthday, that dream cracked wide open. The family drove for 2 days straight until the Pacific glimmered before her eyes. BlueWave Marine Park rose against the coastline, banners flying, music echoing. And then, she saw it. Her first orca. Black and white, massive, ancient, a moving shadow of the sea. She didn't scream with excitement like the other kids. She just stared, breath caught in her chest, as if the ocean itself had whispered her name. In that moment, Sophie made a silent promise. I won't just visit, I'll belong. And if this were TikTok, someone would have written over that scene. POV, the day your destiny finds you. That was the spark. A Kansas girl and a dream too big for dry land. Dreams don't begin with spotlights. For Sophie Lane, they started with a mop in her hands and salt water stinging her skin. At 18, she walked into BlueWave Marine Park, not as a trainer, but as the girl cleaning glass panels streaked with fingerprints and scrubbing floors that reeked of fish. Most people clocked in, did their shift, and left. But Sophie lingered. She stayed by the tanks long after the crowds disappeared, notebook in hand, scribbling down feeding schedules, hand signals, the subtle pauses between commands. She wasn't just watching a show. She was learning a language no one had taught her. And here's the thing. While others saw spectacle, Sophie saw souls. She looked at each orca like a book written in scars and silence. Her quiet persistence caught the eyes of senior staff. First, she was promoted to assistant animal care. Then, an apprentice trainer. Finally, after years of sweat and patience, the whistle she once dreamed of was handed to her. This wasn't luck. This was obsession meeting opportunity. Or, as Twitter might put it, she understood the assignment. Sophie didn't crave fame. She craved connection. And slowly, she built it. Not through power, but through presence. With dolphins, belugas, and finally, the most unpredictable of them all, Eris. Where others saw danger, Sophie saw possibility. But here's the question I'll leave you with tonight. Would you trust 6 tons of raw instinct with nothing but faith? Drop your thoughts below. And don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories of the wild. The afternoon sun hit the stadium in streaks of gold, bouncing off the turquoise pool as thousands of eyes leaned forward in expectation. It was a Sunday matinee, families with sodas, kids clutching plush toys, tourists recording with shaky hands. For Sophie Lane, it was routine. She had done this show dozens of times. Wetsuit snug, whistle ready. Her body moved with calm precision. Across the pool, Eris emerged. 6 tons of black and white muscle breaking the surface like a living storm. The crowd erupted. Laughter, applause, shouts of, "This is insane!" filled the air. Sophie raised her arm, a signal for the spin. Eris obeyed flawlessly, twisting with power that sprayed water over the front rows. Gasps turned to cheers. It felt effortless, almost rehearsed by fate. Step by step, trick by trick, Sophie guided the giant with confidence. The trust between them seemed unshakable. The synchronized dive, the breach, the splash, all perfect. For a moment, it felt like magic. People whispered, "Best day ever." Phones lit up, capturing memories destined for Instagram reels. And then, the shift. No warning, no cue. Eris pivoted sharply, faster than the eye could follow. His jaws closed around Sophie's ponytail, not brutal at first, but firm, unyielding. 1 second the audience thought it was part of the act. The next, a silence sliced through the noise. The pool swallowed her whole. Gasps cracked into screams. A child's voice pierced the stadium. "She's not coming back up!" Parents grabbed their kids, eyes wide in horror. The water exploded in white foam as Eris thrashed. The illusion of harmony shattered in an instant. What had begun as wonder collapsed into terror. This wasn't choreography. This wasn't control. It was instinct, raw and ancient, breaking free. Or, as TikTok might label it, when reality hits different. Above the chaos, one truth hung heavy in the air. The ocean had come calling, and Sophie was trapped in its grip. The sound of applause died in a heartbeat. What had been cheers only seconds before twisted into raw panic. Parents clutched their children, pulling them away from the railing as the water boiled with violence. Eris thrashed like a storm trapped inside a glass cage, his massive body colliding against the pool walls with bone-shaking force. The ground beneath the stands trembled. Sophie's whistle cut through nothing. It dangled uselessly from her lips, a relic of control that no longer existed. Trainers on the sidelines blew their emergency signals, the piercing shrill echoing like alarms in a war zone. Eris didn't flinch. He lunged again, dragging Sophie under in a spiral of bubbles. Her hand surfaced for a fleeting instant, fingers spread wide, before vanishing into the vortex of white foam. A child's scream shattered the silence. Others followed. Gasps, shrieks, the desperate cries of hundreds who now realized they were watching a nightmare. Cameras that once recorded joy kept rolling, capturing horror frame by frame. Some dropped their phones, too stunned to breathe. Others whispered, "No way," No way. This is real. On the pool deck, chaos ignited. Staff sprinted. Emergency kits spilling open as radios crackled with code black. The dreaded phrase that meant trainer submerged, orca aggressive. Divers strapped on masks, only to freeze as Eris surged upward, Sophie's limp body trailing for a split second before he dragged her down again. He was not performing, he was possessing. Every move radiated intent, like a predator reclaiming its ancient right. The music had stopped mid-note, cut off so abruptly that the silence felt violent. Red emergency lights strobed across the arena, painting the scene in jagged shadows. The pool glistened, no longer turquoise, but streaked with crimson threads. Parents shielded young eyes, though the screams had already carved themselves into memory. Trainers shouted his name, slapped the surface, hurled fish across the water. Eris ignored them all. His eyes glimmered black and unyielding, locked on Sophie like a predator unwilling to surrender its prize. Each time she surfaced for air, the crowd inhaled with her, only to collapse in despair as Eris pulled her beneath once more. It was a rhythm of cruelty. Release, reclaim, repeat. Seconds stretched into eternity. Staff rushed to unroll nets, but every attempt failed. Eris barreled through, his tail cracking against the water with the sound of thunder. The stadium shook with every impact. Rescue divers stepped forward, ready to leap, then staggered back as Eris spun violently, warning them off with sheer force. What had begun as spectacle was now carnage in slow motion. The illusion of control, built on decades of shows, applause, and choreography, lay shattered on the surface of that pool. The audience no longer saw a performance. They saw death unfolding in real time. And in that moment, one haunting thought hung over every soul in BlueWave Marine Park. No whistle, no training, no bond could silence the ocean once it decided to roar. Time no longer moved in minutes, it dragged like hours. Every second, Sophie remained beneath the surface carved terror deeper into the crowd. Trainers shouted her name, voices cracking, whistles shrieking until throats burned. None of it pierced Eris's focus. He circled with brutal grace, a storm contained by concrete, pulling Sophie with him like she was nothing more than a rag doll. Her body surfaced for a heartbeat. The crowd gasped in unison. Her arms flailed weakly, hair plastered to her face, eyes wide with desperate instinct. For one fleeting breath, she clung to air. Then Eris lunged again, jaws clamping around her torso, dragging her down so fast the water erupted in a column of spray. The pool boiled with violence. Crimson ribbons swirled where turquoise had been. On the deck, divers crouched, ready to leap. Their commander barked orders. "Stand by." Not yet, because one wrong move meant joining Sophie in Eris's grip. Nets were unfurled, flung wide, only to be torn aside as the orca slammed through them with tail strikes that cracked like gunfire. The sound reverberated across the stands, shaking the bleachers, rattling the bones of everyone watching. Parents screamed for exits, trampling stairs, clutching their children as though the predator might break free of the tank. Others froze, unable to look away, phones shaking in their hands, recording proof that no one would ever forget. "This isn't a show," one voice whispered. "This is murder." Back underwater, Sophie's fight dimmed. Her kick slowed, her hands clawed at empty space. Eris spun her violently, the force snapping her against the glass wall with a dull, sickening thud. Bubbles exploded around them, followed by silence, Then another eruption as Eris surged upward, her limp form dragged like a broken flag. Trainers hurled fish, screamed commands, clapped the water until their palms bled. Eris ignored every plea. His eyes, cold, black, unreadable, never wavered from his captive. He held Sophie not as prey, but as possession. The crowd saw it, felt it, and their fear transformed into horror. They weren't watching a predator hunt for survival. They were watching a predator make a statement. Minutes stretched. Emergency sirens blared, echoing through the park, their wail colliding with the cries of panicked families. Staff tried one final distraction, opening the isolation gate. The metal groaned as hydraulics whined. For the first time, Eris hesitated, circling slower, dragging Sophie's motionless body in his wake. Trainers waved frantically, coaxing, begging, pleading. Finally, after nearly 30 harrowing minutes, Eris slipped through the gate into the isolation pool. The heavy door slammed shut behind him with a metallic finality. The water stilled, though it reeked of salt and blood. Sophie's body floated free at last. Rescuers hauled her out, pale, broken, unrecognizable. Silence thundered through the stadium. No one clapped. No one spoke. They had witnessed not an accident, but a reckoning. And above the carnage, Eris hovered alone, his black fin slicing the surface like a blade. He had released her, but not before leaving a scar carved into every witness's soul. The stadium emptied like a funeral procession. No final announcements, no applause. Only the shuffle of stunned feet and the faint wail of sirens outside. What had been marketed as family entertainment now reeked of death. The illusion of control drowned in the same tank that claimed Sophie Lane's life. News spread faster than the ambulances. Within an hour, headlines screamed across television screens. Trainer killed by killer whale, and orca turns violent during live show. Helicopters hovered overhead, their cameras circling like vultures over the carcass of BlueWave Marine Park's reputation. By nightfall, candles and flowers lined the park's front gates. Protesters raised signs that split into two camps: justice for Sophie and free Eris. Their chants clashed in the darkness, grief colliding with anger. But both sides agreed on one truth. Something had gone terribly, unforgivably wrong. Investigators moved quickly. Footage was seized, trainer testimonies recorded, hidden documents uncovered. And in those files lay a damning story. Eris had shown signs for months: refusal to eat, sudden bursts of aggression, long spells of eerie stillness at the surface. Trainers had filed warnings. Veterinarians had voiced concerns. But the reports had been buried under ticket sales and marketing campaigns. BlueWave issued a polished statement the next morning. "We have suffered a tragedy." The words were smooth, rehearsed, empty. They did not call it preventable. They did not admit they had gambled a woman's life for applause. Sophie's family stood before the cameras with steady voices and broken hearts. They didn't demand revenge. They demanded accountability, not just for Sophie, but for every trainer asked to trust 6 tons of instinct inside a concrete box. And in that demand, the story shifted. This was no longer about one woman and one whale. It was about an entire system built on denial, and a question the world could no longer avoid. How many lives must be shattered before the truth is faced? BlueWave Marine Park never recovered. The gates opened again, but the laughter never returned. Attendance plummeted, school trips were canceled, and sponsors withdrew with silent urgency. Where once the park had sold wonder, Now it carried the shadow of blood. Every splash, every echo, felt like a reminder of what had been lost. Eris never performed again. He was moved to an off-exhibit tank, away from the crowds, away from the music, away from the illusion. There were no lights, no choreography, only the steady hum of pumps and the lonely circle of his body gliding through still water. To some, it looked like punishment. To others, mercy. But either way, it was silence. Sophie's story refused to fade. Documentaries surfaced, the most piercing among them, Tides of Silence, where her image no longer smiled beside a breaching orca, but stood as a warning etched in grief. Lawmakers responded. New safety mandates banned trainers from entering the water during performances. Federal agencies launched sweeping reviews of marine parks across the nation. The tide of denial was breaking. Her family carried her legacy with quiet dignity. They didn't want Sophie remembered for the violence of her final moments, but for the devotion that had defined her life. She had believed in connection, in the fragile bridge between human and wild. That belief cost her everything, but it also forced the world to confront a truth long ignored. Instinct cannot be caged by choreography. In the end, Sophie Lane became more than a trainer. She became a symbol, not of recklessness, but of sacrifice, not of failure, but of courage. Her death left behind silence. But in that silence, questions echoed louder than applause. And for the first time, the world truly listened. The pool lies quiet now. No music, no applause, only the faint echo of water lapping against concrete. Sophie Lane's voice will never rise above the stadium again, yet her presence lingers like salt in the air. She believed trust could bridge the abyss between human and wild. But the ocean does not bend to belief. It does not answer to whistles or routines. It remembers its own laws, and in one terrible moment, those laws reclaimed her. BlueWave Marine Park tried to sell wonder, but the truth beneath the glass was far darker. Eris was not a monster. Sophie was not reckless. Both were captives of a system that promised control, but delivered tragedy. Her death was not simply an accident. It was a warning. And now, I ask you, should orcas like Eris remain behind walls, or should the ocean be their only stage? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe for more voices the world must never forget.